This is the Little Moments Count radio podcast, created in partnership with community radio stations throughout Minnesota. Each episode, you'll hear interviews with early childhood experts on how to support the important brain development that takes place in the first 1,000 days of life, just through little moments every day. Learn more at littlemomentscount.org/podcast.
Good morning, Minneapolis and Twin Cities. Welcome to the narrative here on KRSM with Andrea. This episode is presented in partnership with Little Moments Count. Little Moments Count is a statewide collaborative focused on helping parents and caregivers learn about the importance of brain development in the first 3 years of life. Nearly 80% of brain growth happens in the first 1,000 days, and small moments of interaction like talking, playing, reading, and singing help create the pathways that build a child's brain during this early stage of life. For more information, you can visit at littlemomentscount.org. The narrative is excited to be partnering with Little Moments Counts to host conversations focused on early childhood development. We'll be welcoming a new guest each month to talk about their involvement in Little Moments Count and how they view the role of early childhood development in creating bright futures and strong communities. And we just do want to welcome you to the narrative, because here we do like to amplify the voices, stories, cultures, and conversations that are happening in our neighborhoods, and we focus on communities that have been historically ignored, misrepresented, and erased by traditional media. And my name is Andrea Pierre, and I'm your host. And I do want to welcome Cisa Keller here to the narrative. How are you doing this morning?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. Super excited to be here with Andrea.
We are so excited to have you, and just really excited to learn more about your work and all the good things that you do in our community here. So if you don't know who Cisa Keller is, she is the Senior Vice President of Early Childhood Programs at Think Small. She launched her career in the early childhood education profession by working in the classroom, important fact there. Over the past 20 years, she has expanded her experiences into an effective early childhood policy expert and leader within the field. Cisa successfully incorporates her commitment to early childhood into her professional work. Cisa was a founding member of the Minnesota Early Childhood Crisis Work Group, Minnesota's Future Early Childhood Coalition, and served on the executive committee of the Many Minds campaign. She is presently a member of the Transforming Minnesota Early Childhood Workforce Coalition and the Parent Aware Racial Equity Implementation work group. So yes, again, welcome Cisa to the narrative. We love doing these Little Moments Count experts. I get to meet some of the best minds and people that are thinking and working and thought partners in the field of childhood development. And 20 years, I like the way you have in your bio in the classroom. Let's even just start off with that. Why is that such an important fact that you have that classroom, skill set and experience?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I started off my career in early childhood actually working in a toddler classroom. So working with, those young children that are just starting to be able to express themselves with verbal language, really getting a hold of their motor control. And for me, as you mentioned in my bio, I do a lot of work around kind of large kind of systems work, strategic planning, things like that. And the fact that I have experience grounded in what does that look like in a classroom? What does that look like in engaging with families, working with children from various backgrounds, I think is so important because sometimes we can get lost in the statistics, the data, the bureaucracy of systems, and forget what does that look like on the ground in classroom settings and working with families. That is the most important part. One of the things that I'm most proud of at my work at Think Small is we center everything through the lens of children. What is in the best interest of children? Because what is in the best interest of children is in the best interest of the adults around them, but not necessarily vice versa. So the fact that we're so centered on children is really vitally important.
Yeah, I suppose so, because what is best for adults probably isn't best for children. That's a fact right there. So, like, all this other work that you've done, like in your bio, things that I'm aware with are like Parent Aware. I know Parent Aware will, if you're looking for childcare, those are the folks that kind of make sure that certain expectations are met, our levels are met. Can you just tell people a little bit more what that means, though, like Parent Aware? Because sometimes you'll see the signs like, I'm a 5-star, 4-star Parent Aware service provider for childcare.
Absolutely, yeah. So Parent Aware is Minnesota's quality rating and improvement system. Every state has a version of this. Ours was really focused and designed. It was actually the first one in the country that was designed with families in mind. And the idea was that we wanted to give a tool, we wanted to create a tool in which families could very quickly, easily, right? Because we know parents have limited space and time, and they have so much going on. And what we wanted to do is be able to give them this tool to really be able to assess what their childcare needs were and how they could be met through the lens of school readiness. And so what Parent Aware does is it is a structure in which childcare providers, early educating, learning settings can basically indicate what policies, practices, things they're doing in their program that are most aligned with making sure that children have the skills, the opportunities, the experiences most aligned with being ready for school to really reach their fullest potential. And then those indicators, those star levels, as you mentioned, there's 4 stars, are then being able to be marketed to families. And so a family can very quickly, look and be like, okay, there's lots of factors that I need to be taking into consideration: location, price, and school readiness. And so this is a simple tool to be able to do that. And it's really been built also through a lens of continuous improvement, because we know that this is an ever-growing, ever-learning situation. There is more research coming out every day about the importance of brain development, making sure that young children have really high-quality experiences. And we want to make sure that Parent Aware reflects that the most recent research and best practices. As you mentioned, one of the things that I've been really involved in the last couple of years is around making sure that racial equity is at a core of Parent Aware. And so this is something we're actively doing, is making sure that the racial equity components are embedded into the Parent Aware best practices. And so that's a great example of something that we're starting to really look at what does that look like in a toddler classroom, in an infant classroom, and then how do childcare providers, how do early childhood educators actually document what they're doing so that, again, parents can have this information.
So is it more like making sure there's like culturally relevant books in the classroom, or dolls or toys, or is there more to it than that as well? There's
more to it than that. I think, absolutely, right? There's all levels. And I think this is one of the beauties of Parent Aware is we recognize that there is a lot of range in that. So you can start with making sure, does every child see themselves in their setting, right? So are there books? Are there, toys? Are the posters? Can they see themselves in that? In larger settings like childcare centers, do the teachers reflect who they are, and their community? Is their language welcomed? Is the written word around them, is that there? But then you get into like, how do adults interact with children? How do they see them as their authentic selves, and really trying to encourage them to really embody that and prosper and thrive in that area. So there's a lot of things. Think Small is actually right now, we are piloting an effort to really empower, give kind of a reflective practice set of tools and strategies for the educators in the room, in the classroom, to make sure that they really are doing what's in the best interest through a racial equity lens. So we're piloting a tool that was designed in Boston University right now in 12 programs here in the Twin Cities, and really excited about the experience we're having. Because what we know is that early childhood educators, they do this work because they love this work. They love children. They love families. They love their community. They want to do what's in the best interest of those children. And sometimes we just need to make sure that they have the skills, knowledge, and competence to be able to deliver on that love. So.
Yeah, I agree. I had several family members who had home daycares and things like that. And it's truly like a very hard job. Like they would be up at the crack of dawn, cleaning, cooking for the day, prepping. And then you're working very late, waiting for parents to get off, and you have to clean up again. And you don't get time off. And when you do get time off, they would always feel so guilty, you know what I mean? Because they knew that these families were really depending on them. And they deserve a lot of support and better pay, in my opinion. All educators do. So what can parents really do, in your opinion, to maximize their child's brain development?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think this is something that Little Moments Count has just become an absolute leader on, and we're so thrilled to be a partner within Little Moments Count. And really, I think it is starting just very simple and really recognizing that this little bundle of joy you have in front of you, their brain is just constantly learning and making connections, and so trying to create all those experiences to really maximize on that. So talking to your children, learning to your children. When you're on the bus, pointing out the different colors or finding letters. Those things, they seem really simple, but they are so impactful. And so really just, as a parent, we know, I remember when I was a young mom with 2 young children, you're just trying to make sure that you get dinner on the table, you get them to bed, you get the laundry done. And so, but in each one of those instances, there's an opportunity to engage with your child. And so just really recognizing that and then maximizing on that. So as you're doing laundry, count out the socks as you're throwing them in the washing machine, trying to find the colors. Can you go find something else that's the same color as this particular socks? And like I say, just being intentional around those opportunities. And then, as a parent, you are the most important adult in a child's life. But we know that truly it does take a village to raise a child. And so there's lots of other adults that are surrounding that child. And so making sure that all the adults around that child are really doing that and seeing that individual child as truly an individual and wanting to really maximize and just focus in on that child's needs and how they're so unique. So as it relates to childcare, making sure you have a childcare provider, that you find a childcare provider that aligns with your family's values, what you find important, and then realizing that that's a partnership. So how can you work with that particular childcare provider to really bring in your own family values, your family's, whether it's celebrations or various cultural things. That's what you want to be doing. So.
Yeah, we've had other guests on, too, that say it's so important just to even just narrate your day, like, oh, what color is the sock? Or I'm going to pour the eggs into the batter and I'm going to mix it up. Or, I've been telling them, do you want to help mix it? Maybe just setting something aside for them, even if it's just water or whatever, for them to kind of get some of that input and that play. So if you are able to really do these things, these little moments, what are the likely benefits for children as they enter into kindergarten and then go on through grade school or elementary school?
If we start at the most foundational level, the thing that we're doing just biologically is we are maximizing on that brain development. As you mentioned in the intro, 80% of the brain development happens in those first few days, right? And so we want to make sure that all those connections in the brain are have been made and are solid. So that as they get into later years, they've got this really, really solid foundation. And then, on top of that next layer is really making sure that the child believes in themselves. They know that they are valued, that they are seen for who they really are, that they know that they can do whatever they want to do so that they can reach their full potential. One of the indicators of progress that the state of Minnesota has in trying to, kind of align curriculum is approaches to learning. We want to make sure that children are curious, that they feel like they can ask questions, that they can delve into those things. And if they're nervous and they don't feel like they have a voice, it's really hard to be curious if you don't feel like you have a voice. And so we want to make sure that every child shows up at whatever their kindergarten classroom is and says, I'm ready to learn. I'm really ready to maximize on every experience that's thrown at me, and go forth and do those things. So that's really what we're doing in those early years is biologically making sure that the brain has all those connections, the maximum amount of connections that they have. And then on the individual child, really making sure that they feel, really valued and seen, and ready to just maximize on life. Yeah.
And do you have any information about how important it is getting those first 1,000 days? I feel like is what you were kind of touching on in your previous answer is, the long-term education and health benefits for getting those 1,000 days, those first 1,000 days of a child's life correct.
Yeah. So I think if we look at it from the opposite side, when those things don't happen, on the most extreme, there's a line of science around adverse childhood experiences. And so these are things like experiencing homelessness, violence in the family, various elements. So there's actually, most recently, COVID has been added to an adverse childhood experience. So unfortunately, every one of our children has one right off the bat. But the more adverse childhood experiences a child has, what we know is that in later years, we've been talking a lot about school readiness and whatnot, but there are huge adverse experiences that will adversely contribute to low, harder health outcomes. For example, more risks of diabetes, heart disease, depression, things like that. So there are some long-term studies that, again, children that don't have high-quality early childhood experiences are more likely to drop out of high school. They're more likely to be involved in the criminal justice system. They're more likely in the K-12 system to be, qualifying for special ed services. So it's kind of one of those things where it's like we either do it really well in those first 1,000 days or we don't, and we have all of these really huge impacts later on. And in every instance, you can always try to, if you have, enough intervention, you can kind of level out some of that. But it's so much better if we just focus on the first 1,000 days. You just start off on the right trajectory, and then we're not spending so much energy trying to catch up. And so that's one of the things I think that we keep trying to emphasize is that the more we can focus on these first 5 years, the first 3 years, the first 1,000 days, the more likely we are going to be able to just be. It's really about investment, or you either invest now or you pay the price later, basically.
And that is so true.
Yeah.
And it's cheaper to educate a child than it is to put someone into a prison system and put them through those complex processes.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
And we need more people that are not going into jail. We need people that are going to, help our society, contribute positively, have a good, fulfilling life. And a lot of that does come with, having food, having shelter, and those types of things too, I think are adverse childhood experiences.
Absolutely.
Experiencing hunger.
Yeah.
Let's take a little bit of a station break here. You're listening to The Narrative here on KRSM. It's our Little Moments Count segment. We're talking to Cisa Keller, the executive director at Senior Vice President. Let's get that right. Senior Vice President at Think Small. And we'll be back in just 30 seconds here. And we are back here on The Narrative on KRSM, speaking to Cisa Keller, the Senior Vice President of Early Childhood Programming at Think Small. On The Narrative, we do like to amplify the voices, story, cultures, and conversations happening in our neighborhood. The first Tuesday of the month, we talk to our Little Moments Count folks, and it's all about focusing on early childhood development and how little moments can really change a child's life. If you want more information, you can visit at littlemomentscount.org. Cisa. So we kind of touched a little bit about the Parent Aware program and just like all the work that it does. You're on the Equity Implementation Work Group. I'm wondering, do you have any stories of a family that was like really positively impacted by your work there and with Parent Aware?
Yeah, so I don't necessarily have a very specific story, but we hear often from families. We did a study a few years ago, and one of the things that we found is that, over and over we heard parents that talked about that when their child was in a child care program that they knew their child was going to be thriving in, that parent was able to go and do whatever they were adulting in such a much more meaningful way, whether that was going to school, looking for a job, working in a career. They were able to just go and do that and really like focus on that than being so worried about what was going on with their child. And so what we saw was basically this collective impact, right, where not only was the child thriving, but the parents were thriving themselves. And then together they were just really rising up, all boats rise. And so I think that is so meaningful. And I think what we've also heard from parents that are in parent-aware rated programs is they feel like they have a trusted partner, right? So most of us don't come, children don't come with a manual that tells us how to raise them.
No.
Sometimes, you wish they had that. Like, what am I supposed to be doing right now? But when you have this really meaningful relationship with your child care provider, they're an immediate resource where you're like, well, what happens, what happens next around this particular behavior? Whether it's one you're just trying to figure out, or you have a toddler that's, going through a biting phase, you have this, this navigator basically that's helping you through like what is developmentally appropriate practices. I can personally share that one of the things that, I, as a young mom, I had no idea what to do for potty training with my oldest child. And guess what? It was my teachers that were really able to help me and figure out how to do that. And so that's what we hear from parents is they have this resource, this individual that is going to love their child for who they are, is going to really support them. And then is this trusted resource, is this amazing partner in helping raise their child. So that's what we hear from parents when they're in a parent-aware rated program. And then, on the flip side, what we hear from providers, childcare providers that participate in Parent-Aware, is they feel like, back to your point about compensation earlier, they feel like this is an opportunity in which people can actually acknowledge the hard work they do, and get some recognition from that, that this is a profession. This is not babysitting. This is hard work. When we talk about rocket science, this is rocket science. When you're talking about literally the brain development of a young child, this is hard work to be able to do this well. And so participating in Parent-Aware and all the benefits that come from Parent-Aware is a huge recognition for those child care providers. So it is an amazing story. So,
and I kind of feel like what you're saying, people really respecting the child care profession as a profession, as those people being professionals, being skilled, is something new. I feel like now, because I feel like when I'll be 45 this August, but I feel like when I was growing up, it wasn't necessarily looked upon as like a real profession. And what do you think has changed that? Why do you think that's coming about differently now?
No, absolutely. And we're still on that uphill trajectory. We're still not yet quite there where everybody recognizes it as a profession, but we have seen a significant shift in the last 10 to 15 years. And I think that's really as more and more research has come out around the huge benefits of the early brain development and what that means in the long term. All sorts of stakeholders are now recognizing that, this is not just making sure that a child's in a safe place. We want to make sure that they're in a place. Yeah, just change. Wow. Right, exactly. So this is brain building, brain architecture, and so as people are started to acknowledge what that is, and it's been interesting because making sure that you have really good childcare and thriving childcare, we really look at it through kind of a triple bottom line, right? Like we've been talking a lot about the children, a little bit about the benefits to families, but there's a huge benefit to community too, right? So whether it's making sure that, who's the workforce that's coming in behind all of us that are going to, retire in 15, 20, 30 years. We want to make sure we have an educated workforce, a thriving workforce that's coming behind us. So we have a huge business community and economic development folks that are recognizing we really need to, if we want to think about the long-term thriving of our community, we need to make sure that we're really looking at those earliest years. And so
make sure the kids are all right?
They're all right. Yeah. And so, and then I think, huge shout out to all of my colleagues in the early childhood work, or in early childhood sector. We've been beating this drum for decades, talking about the importance of early childhood. But when you see things at where, for example, just most recently, President Biden signed an executive order around childcare, investing in childcare. We have huge, the largest investments at the state legislature in early childhood. When you see policymakers talking about the importance of early childhood, mayors talking about it, things like that. That just raises the visibility, and I think that has been a huge shift as well.
I agree with that. So you work at Think Small, And for folks who are not familiar with Think Small, can you tell us more about that organization?
Absolutely. Yeah. So Think Small has been around since 1971. We actually started off as a toy lending library for child care providers in the Twin Cities metro. We literally had this green bus, and we would just go around to child care providers and rotate out the toys. So yeah, that was our beginning. We now have, over 100 employees and really focusing on a variety of things. Our mission is to advance quality care and education for children in their crucial early years. And we really do that through our strategic plan, our strategic plan goal, which is all children in Minnesota are ready for kindergarten. And it's kind of monitored through a data-driven continuous improvement process. And so what we're really doing is making sure the majority of our work is really focused on making sure our most at-risk children, so children from low-income communities, BIPOC communities, those children that might traditionally be landing in our achievement gap. Minnesota has honestly the worst achievement gap in the country between children of color, particularly our Black and brown children and white children, and really making sure that those children have access to the highest quality care. So that's kind of our driving force. Again, back to children are the center of everything we do. And so we do a variety of things. We really start by strengthening families, making sure that families have the financial resources to be able to access those high quality programs. We administer a variety of financial supports, including early learning scholarships, as well as a variety of parent engagement strategies, including parent power text, which we can talk more about that later if we have time. And then we do a whole sector of work around just supporting childcare providers, making sure that they have the skills, knowledge, and competence they need to be able to support young children and their families and their community. So whether that's professional development or coaching, we have an early childhood specific library as part of an arm of the St. Paul Library. We have a publication arm. We actually Red Leaf Press. We just launched an online platform called Think Small Institute, which has all sorts of high quality content for child care providers centered on an anti-racial pedagogy. So all sorts of things. And then the third bucket of work we do is really around catalyzing change. What we want to do is make sure that at the highest level, our systems level, that those are keeping children at the center, our most vulnerable children, and the workforce, right? Like we need to make sure that as we're having conversations at the state capitol, in our various state departments, that those things are center. And so we do a lot of policy and advocacy work in that space as well, trying to catalyze those change. So
exciting time.
A lot of time. Yes.
So if I say I am a family and I have a family, but say you're a younger family, you have a 2-year-old and a 6-month-old, and you really are struggling and you need help. How could Think Small really help you? Like, say you're having issues with childcare. You're thinking something might be up with maybe the youngest one. They don't seem like they're doing what the oldest child was doing at the same exact time. How could, and also you're struggling with food support and maybe even a safe place to live at that time. Can Think Small help a family like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Probably the largest area that we can do a lot of support in particular is around that financial support, making sure that families have access to the funds they would need to be able to access those high quality early learning experiences. And so we can do that in a variety of ways here in the metro, either through, as I mentioned, the early learning scholarships, which really families that are income eligible just have to fill out a form. It's a fairly simple form showing that they are income eligible, and then they are awarded this scholarship, right? And they get to go, and we have a coordinator, actually a family engagement coordinator, that will help you find the child care provider that best meets your needs, right? So they'll help you do that shopping using Parent Aware, all sorts of things, and then you can go and find that child care provider and utilize that scholarship. And that once you've qualified, your child will have that scholarship until they go to kindergarten.
Wow.
Which is huge. Just knowing that you
don't
aren't
need to re-up every year. Sometimes that's the hard part.
Yeah, sometimes we do have to, once a year, just get, yep, I still need this, kind of a thing. But it's very simple. But yeah, for the most part, you have it until you go to kindergarten. You're not having to submit all sorts of unnecessary paperwork, because honestly, we know that families' experiences are not changing that drastically in a 5-year standpoint. They may be progressing, but they're not changing that dramatically. So, and then once we have them kind of with an early childhood program, that's where then we can really start looking at those other supports. As you mentioned, the food supports, housing. One of the partners that we absolutely just love working with here in the Twin Cities is Northside Achievement Zone, right? And so Northside Achievement Zone, commonly referred to as NAZ, has a whole family approach, right? And they have a navigator, a coach that's directly linked to that family, and looking at all those elements and really trying to, because we know you could have the best childcare, but if you don't know where the next meal is coming from, you don't know where you're going to be living, the first of next month, that becomes increasingly challenging. So really, our kind of focus is really around that access to childcare. That's where we have the biggest impact. But we recognize that all those other things need to be in place. And so then it's connecting with our various partners, and trying to make sure that those supports are there. Yeah.
I love that. What's your website? How can people get a hold?
Absolutely, yeah. So our website is thinksmall.org. Quite easy. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Twitter. So there's lots of information. And if you, we're also on the Little Moments Count website, so you can always go there, find out more information. But yeah, that is the easiest way to connect with us. Yeah.
My next question is around, you kind of touched on it, that parent-powered text program that Think Small is a part of. Can you just tell us more about that as well?
So this is a really exciting, we launched this a few years ago. And we launched it, it was actually something where we found, it was a research out of Yale that found that a series of texts, 3 very simple texts that were sent to parents, significantly increased the child's literacy skills, as well as the family engagement. Like, parents just felt more empowered. And so we worked with the researcher who left Yale and started his own company. We're working with them and launched Parent Power Text here in Minnesota. And as I said, it is 3 simple texts that come Monday, Wednesday, Friday, that are all written to be really about trying to focus on that brain development. So we've mentioned a few activities around counting socks or things like that. This just gives, the ideas that it gives kind of a fact, like something that's really important. Here's something you can kind of explore, and then here's something you can do a little bit more. That's kind of the trajectory of those texts. And they are done. You don't need any materials. You don't need to do any prepping. You literally just get your text and you're like, oh, that's a really good idea. There may be some additional resources. And those texts are available. They're free of cost. You can go to thinksmall.org and sign up for this Parent Power Text. You can also sign up from the Little Moments Count website, and you get they're designed for children from birth to age 5. And as I said, they're every week, 52 weeks, 3 texts a week, and they're amazing. We often laugh, though. The toddler texts work really well for teenagers as well. Is a nice little side note. So surprisingly,
now I'm going to sign up because I'm
exactly
a teenage.
Yeah,
I'm in the middle of it.
And they're designed obviously for parents, but we have heard from grandparents that have been signing up for it and doing it. Childcare providers are signing up for it. So really, if you have a young child in your life in any way, shape, or form, these texts are absolutely amazing. So
that is so cute.
Yeah,
we have had other hosts talk about that and didn't realize that it was coming from Think Small. So it's really nice to meet the people behind it. And I think also just thinking of my parenting journey, I just remember when I was pregnant, I really enjoyed anything that told me about the development of the baby. And just thinking now that the baby's here, how much fun it would be to have had something like that, like what toys to play with or something to just do with your child, because you don't know. You just don't know, or you might forget. So it's always good to have those additional support from trusted messengers.
Absolutely.
I love all of this. Let's take just a little short station break, our last one. And then I want to touch on what's going on at the legislature, if there's any other events or anything like that we need to touch on. But you're listening to The Narrative here on KRSM. I'm Andrea, your host, and we'll be back with more Cisa Keller, who is the Vice President of Early Childhood Programs at Think Small, and we'll be back in 1 second. And you're back on The Narrative with Andrea Pierre. I'm here with my host, Cisa Keller, Vice President of Early Childhood Programs at Think Small. We've been having just a lively conversation about that first 1,000 days of life, how childhood early, sorry, I got a little bit of buzz there, how childhood brain development is very important, and just talking about brain growth, ways you can be a good parent, talking about the great things that parents are aware, and at Think Small and how it can support your family if you are in need of resources. For more information, you can always go to littlemenwoncount.org and CISA. So we have this trifecta in the legislature right now. Lots of big legislations has been passed. We know that our governor is an educator as well and has an education background, talks a lot about early childhood development, things like that. What is happening currently in regards to early learning?
Yeah, so we are very excited about the trajectory of this legislative session. As you mentioned, outside of early childhood, there's been some pretty significant legislation that has passed, over the months. And so we're now at the period of time in which kind of the final elements are being discussed and differences are being talked about between the House and the Senate. But in general, this legislative session, as a refresher for our listeners, we are in a budget year, so this is when they're deciding where are they going to spend all the various dollars that are theirs to spend, with a huge surplus. Some of the, honestly, the largest surplus I've ever seen in my career. A lot of that is one-time money. It's not ongoing money, but we've got money right now to invest in our communities, and we know that communities need some immediate investments. And so early childhood is definitely one of the priorities that we've seen discussed. When the governor and the lieutenant governor, Governor Tim Walz and Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan came out with their budget proposals early in session, had huge investments in early childhood. So that kind of set the tone for all the conversations. And then, the various House and Senate leadership and committee chairs, we just had a wealth of conversation around investment in early childhood. Back to our earlier conversation of like what has shifted. It has just been absolutely thrilling to walk into a Senate hearing or a House hearing and having legislators talking about brain development. And we're no longer having the conversation of, is it important? It's really about what are we going to do? We all know it's important, so how are we going to invest? And that's a very different conversation that we have not had really at this level ever. So this is historic for us. And yeah, so we are seeing somewhere close to probably somewhere between $750 million to $1 billion invested in early childhood, depending on how you want to categorize various elements. This is everything from, a huge increase in those early learning scholarships, as well as another funding source called the Child Care Assistance Program. Those are both resources for income-eligible families to be able to access quality care. Huge investments. I mean, literally the largest investments we've ever seen. And so that means that more, with also a shift that really aligns with Little Moments Count to really focusing on those earliest days, those first 1,000 years. The last few years, there's been a lot of focus on 3 and 4-year-olds, and the 3 and 4-year-olds are really important. But as we know, it's those first 1,000 days. So that infant and toddler shift, that infant and toddler focus is really exciting to see. So lots of investments there, investments in the child care providers themselves, whether it's payments to address some of the compensation issues that we've touched on a little bit, to making sure that anybody that's interested in actually opening a child care program can. We launched as a state launched a program called Wayfinder last spring. And so anybody that's interested in actually becoming a child care provider, there's a whole set of resources, coaches, staff, technical assistance, funds to actually help you open a child care program and successfully be able to support the families in your community. So seeing investments there as well. There's tax credits. There's just a wealth of investments. And so we're really excited. It's not done. We are in conference committee right right now. They're literally meeting as we speak, kind of talking about the differences between the House and the Senate. But at its core, we have really solid things. We're just talking about, is it going to be $250 million or is it going to be $270 million?
Wow.
That's the conversation we're kind of having at the legislature. And so we anticipate that those early childhood bills will be making their way to the governor's desk here in the next couple of weeks, and that we are going to be for the first time in the state of Minnesota truly putting our youngest citizens first, and so that's very exciting. It's worth noting though that while we're having these historic investments, we're not done. This is not going to fund everybody that needs to be funded, whether we're talking about the children and the families or the child care providers. There's still a lot of work to be done, but this is really setting the stage for the conversations we should be having about investing rather than dealing with the situations later. So, yeah.
I agree. And it's so inspiring to see where you don't have to start way with all this framework. Like everyone really now gets the framework, and I feel like the lobbyists are just like childhood educators have done a great job educating us around what is needed and why we're having all these issues. And hopefully this can be something that'll be groundbreaking so that in the next 30 years, we'll be doing a lot better when it comes to our, like you're saying, our youngest citizens. Because I do agree, if we don't invest now, we'll definitely be paying for that later. How has support been in community for this? Is it something that's been bipartisan, or like, how has it been received?
Yeah. This is one of the areas I will say that there is a lot of bipartisan support for early childhood. And that's, again, back to the advocates, the lobbyists, the stakeholders, everybody you've had on this radio station. It is really recognizing that this is not a partisan issue. Investing in our children, everybody wants to invest in children. And so when there are differences, it's really about how do we invest, not should we invest. And so, as I mentioned, one of the areas that's newer to really investing in early childhood, though also foundational, is the business community. I mean, the business community is actually was the one that actually started early learning scholarships and piloted Parent Aware. They raised $20 million to start that program. That came from the business community because they recognized that investing in these early years really supported Minnesota's economic development and prosperity in the later years. And so, yeah, there's great bipartisan support in all of these areas. And so that's exciting to see too, that we don't have, some of the partisanship that we see in other areas. And that really makes sure, again, as we think about the long-term vision of this, there are going to be shifts and changes as to party leadership. And so making sure that we have an issue that everybody can get behind is really important and important to all of us. So, so that's exciting.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think anything to get people to stop fighting. Like, let's just stop. So we kind of touched on how Think Small has their early learning scholarship, how it is eligible, like it's by income, or is it by like how many children you have? Like, how can you really get into that?
So it's the main eligibility for early learning scholarships, and I'm also going to add child care assistance in there as well, is income eligibility, right? So it is based on a family's income. And then, within early learning scholarships, we do have some prioritization, again, because this is focused on our most vulnerable children. So, for example, families that may be experiencing homelessness, children of teen parents, families that are children in the foster care system, things like that. There's a variety of priority areas that we want to make sure that we're funding first. Again, if we see the investments that we're going to see coming out of the legislature that are being proposed, there'll be less need to prioritize necessarily because we're going to have that much more funding to be able to serve that many children. But always wanting to make sure our most vulnerable children are fully served first. All boats rise, and so we want to start with our most vulnerable and then move up those income eligibilities.
Mm-hmm. No, I know for a fact that I probably would not have been able to graduate from college if it wasn't for the scholarship that I got for childcare, because it was just too much.
Yeah.
And even though I had family to support me, they couldn't always be there, unfortunately, and they tried their best, but that added boost definitely helped me obtain my degree. So if you are listening and you want to go to school and you need childcare and you're worried about that, please go and get that resource, thinksmall.org. Any events or anything like that happening at Think Small that we should know about? I know that you do grants also for people who have child care centers and maybe want to make improvements or even sign up for Parent Aware, things like that. Can you explain any of that to us or give any information on that?
Yeah, probably the easiest way, as you mentioned, there's just a variety of supports that we do offer. And as with anything, there's always deadlines and timelines. But the best way to really make sure that you are aware of those various deadlines is really to follow us on social media. Facebook is great. We have newsletters, so you can go, again, thinksmall.org and sign up for our newsletters. Probably the biggest one, as you just mentioned, that's coming up, a particular deadline. We've focused a lot on Parent Aware and really making sure that all of our child care providers are Parent Aware rated. There is a deadline if you want to participate in the July cohort. That deadline is June 10th. So you're going to want to go and sign up for that. Other than that, we have a ton of just an absolute plethora of early childhood high quality trainings that are available for our child care providers. And so, those are a great opportunity. Again, you can find all of that information at thinksmall.org. And those are really the only two that I can think of off the top of my head. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. No, you guys do a lot. Like if you go to the website, so I encourage you to go to thinksmall.org. There is a lot of information. They're also hiring, so if you're looking for a job, you always got to put that out there.
Yep.
But I do just want to thank you again, Cisa, for being on. Anything closing out that you need to say or want our listeners to know?
Yeah. Well, just again, thank you for hosting this program. I think having ongoing conversations about early childhood is just so important for all of our communities. And so thank you again for having the program and partnering with Little Moments Count and having me on here. And I think this is just a transformational time for Minnesota to really be putting our children first. And again, all boats rise as we support our children, support their families. We all do better, and we are all just thriving. And I'm just so thrilled and excited for where we are as Minnesotans.
Feels good, doesn't it?
It does.
Thank you so much, Cisa Keller, for being on. Cisa is the Senior Vice President of Early Childhood Programs at Think Small. And this was the end of our segment. You were listening to The Narrative here on KRSM, and you can hear a recording of this show at littlemomentscount.org /backlash podcast. Excuse me. So let me read that again. You can hear a recording of the show at littlemomentscount.org /podcast. And if you'd like to learn more about Little Moments Count, you can visit their website at littlemomentscount.org. And I hope everyone has a good week. Take care of yourself, drink some water, and we'll be back on The Narrative on Thursday with another guest. So thank you for tuning in.
Thanks for listening to the Little Moments Count radio podcast in partnership with community radio stations throughout Minnesota. You can find the Little Moments Count radio podcast wherever you get your podcasts and at littlemomentscount.org /podcast.